What is going on, ProGuides family? Happy holidays to all, and thank you for growing with our channel over the course of this year. 2022 looks to be a promising year for all things Valorant, and we can't wait to see what the devs have in store for us. With that being said, for our last video of the year, we want to leave you guys with the tier list of the current status of the agents so that we have a good idea of where the meta stands as we head into 2022. And if you're trying to make 2022 your year, there's no better time to get to grinding to improve. We're collaborating with none other than the Astra King Sentinel Zoms to host a bootcamp designed to turn you into a star player. Whether you're a part of Zoms Nation or not, this is an exclusive opportunity to learn from the best in the game and start carrying your team. Spots are limited, so make sure you check out the link in the description fast. Now, let's start off with the S tier. What would a 2021 tier list be without Jett at the top? It has been a long year of Valorant, and it's safe to say that Jett has stood the test of time and has cemented herself as a top duelist in the game for 2021. Jett is just ridiculously mobile with no clear counters, and that makes it exceptionally hard to deal with her in most site tick situations. Her dash alone makes her pretty much an OP agent because it creates so much versatility around her playstyle that not only can she smoke dash onto site, she can also take aggressive defender angles, play off angles, and also have a quick escape for bad situations. Jett is a Swiss Army knife in the duelist class, which means she will always be a good choice for virtually any situation. Going into 2022, Jett will look to continue her reign of dominance unless the devs finally decide to hit her with some nerfs. One agent that has been consistent all year and will continue to be consistent in the future is Sova. Sova is undoubtedly the best initiator in the role, and that is saying something when you think about how popular Skye, KO, and Breach have become in Act 3. But what personal attributes does Sova have that separates him from the rest of the pack? Well, Sova is an agent that just provides a ton of info while also having some safe yet aggressive tools. His kit is great for basically all situations, and that makes it hard to find someone who can challenge Sova's informational value. Sova has a low skill floor because he's simple to pick up, but he has a super high skill ceiling because of all of his abilities that can be useful for most situations. Sova is almost becoming a must pick in solo queue as his kit is too good to pass up. Well. At the beginning of 2021, if you had told me that Viper would be an S tier pick for 80% of the year, I would have laughed at you. Viper was laughably bad in 2020 before she got her rework, so her reign of dominance in 2021 was a surprise to most in the community. After her rework, not a whole lot changed with her kit, but the devs did give her some numbers buffs and that skyrocketed her value. Viper's kit gained a lot of damage on all of her abilities and her toxins, which gave her abilities much more upfront value than before. Viper is viable on pretty much any map, and she's a must pick on some maps as well, which is definitely a big plus for Viper mains. She does take a bit more experience in order to make work since her controller kit is not like traditional smokes, so each map will require its own set of lineups. But nonetheless, her damage output and zone control make her an agent to be feared by all players. Viper and the agent that's coming up next have been running the controller class, and they look to be the best controller Sentinel hybrid duo going into the new year. With that being said, closing out the S tier, Astra is returning to the top of the tier list once again. It's been an interesting year for Astra to say the least. She went from being busted on release and S tier to falling a little bit after some nerfs at the start of episode 3, and now players are realizing she's still extremely valuable when in the right hands. Compared to other controllers, you simply don't want to trade off her utility, its value, and how it can be applied around the map. Astra has the main smoke role on lock right now in the meta for any maps where smokes are valuable. At this point, her impact is so undeniably big that you can literally feel the difference when an Astra is on your team compared to another smoker like Omen or Brimstone. There's just no competition for Astra at the moment, and with the skill ceiling as astronomically high as this agent, we can only expect to see the gap widen each passing day as teams and players innovate with their kit. The most deserving agent for the top of the A tier for this list is none other than Skye. Skye has gone through quite a bit of changes. When she was released, not many people knew how to utilize her kit well, which caused her to not be picked as often. After a few changes and many VCT appearances later, Skye is now a mainstay in the competitive meta. The Skye craze from earlier this summer seems to have died down since she received a couple nerfs early in episode 3, but she is still extremely good. Her flashes are still probably some of the most broken in the game, and that means she always has a place on a team as a solid threat. Her kit as a whole has a bit of everything you'd want in a support: flashes, heals, and information gathering. Skye is a very viable pick in the meta, if you want to be the main facilitator on your team. Chamber is the newest addition to the Valorant roster for 2021, so we don't have a ton of data on him yet to make any concrete decisions on where he falls in the meta. I mean, he wasn't even available at VCT Champions overall, so we haven't even seen how he can be used by the best players in the game. But it's pretty clear at the moment that Chamber is basically the best Sentinel for ranked right now. He skirts the line between Duelist Sentinel due to how powerful his AWP and Sheriff pistol are that he gets in his kit. Chamber also has good mobility with his teleports, which allows him to be almost in 2 places at once on defense, and it also allows him to have access to most angles in the game. And we can't forget about his traps, which makes him an excellent flank watcher on offense, and an even better sight denier on defense. Chamber looks like he will play a big role in the overall meta in 2022, and you can see pro players playing Chamber very often on some maps like Haven or Icebox currently. One agent in the Sentinel class that is ending the year on a down note is Killjoy. Earlier this year, Killjoy was enjoying some of the top spots in S tier as she was a popular favorite pick in the meta. Her ultimate, turret, and nano swarm nades allowed you to cover a lot of ground and force the enemy team into some bad positions. Unfortunately, Riot didn't like how high her power level was, so they started to hit her with some nerfs to her nades and her turret. On top of that, Riot added on to the abilities for agents like Breach to directly counter her strongest ability, her lockdown. She's still a very good pick, don't get us wrong, but she's just not overwhelming when utilized correctly, which makes her healthier as an agent but not as popular as she once was. Reyna is not the best overall duelist in the game at the moment, as that spot goes to Jett, but nonetheless she is a solo queue monster in the right hands. Reyna has a caveat to her as an agent where her power level scales with the skill level of the player playing her. That means she can either be really good or really bad in your games, and it's mostly due to how she's being piloted by the player playing her in the game. But one of the big reasons for why she can function well in the meta is because of the community's overall skill level going up. People understand how to support duelists more, so it is much easier for duelists to get into sites or take a favorable duel early on. In fact, her pick rate in the pro meta has steadily gone up to match the rise in skill. As in Champion, she was picked a little more than 20% of the time. Of course, nowhere near Jett, who sits at an overwhelming 82%. Now, moving on to my favorite addition into Valorant this year, let's talk KO. KO is a weird agent to call right now. Despite having quite a powerful kit on paper, he never really felt like an oppressive agent in game. This was reflected in KO's low pick rate after he was released, and it stayed low up until Act 3 when some players realized he was a great counter to Sentinels and controllers on defense. Suppression is definitely a mechanic that was built for the future, and right now it's starting to prove effective as a consistent counter against defensive setups, and his flashes are now just as strong as Sky's flashes for popping around corners. All this makes KO feel a lot smoother to play, and overall a much stronger pick as a duelist initiator hybrid. KO is steadily rising to match the utility metagame, and he's proving to be a really nifty pick for maps like Split or Breeze where his knives can directly counter Viper's setups. Raze is in a weird spot in the meta. She is niche in the duelist class, which is to say she works well for some maps but feels weak on others. She doesn't have the self-sustainability in her kit that other duelists have, but she supplements that with a whole lot of damage that functions exceptionally well on choky maps like Split and Bind. Raze specializes in dealing boatloads of AoE damage quickly, so even though she does lack sustainability, she has a spot on teams as an agent that can create and deny a lot of space. Raze isn't bad as a duelist, but she definitely isn't able to compete with the likes of Jett at the moment. And since double duelist comps are becoming much less common, it's harder to justify using her over Jett. Sage is unique because she's viable everywhere but not a must pick in the meta. Sage is without a doubt a much better solo queue agent than a competitive play agent right now. And this is mainly because of her wall that is great for map control, and her healing and ultimate ability can erase teammates' mistakes in an instant. But outside of her being able to do these two things really well, Sage can't compete with the likes of Chamber, Killjoy, or even Viper or Astra in the Sentinel role. As a Sentinel, Sage lacks info gathering and flank watch capabilities, which does put her below her counterparts in the meta. If you're looking for a reliable agent who can always bring something to the table, Sage is still a great pick. But if you're looking for the best, it seems like other agents have taken her spot away. Cypher. The once king of info gathering Sentinel has now been relegated to flank watch duty in the meta. Cypher's in the B tier, but he's not an objectively terrible agent. His kit is still good for what his job is. The main issue with Cypher is that the other Sentinels in his class have more aggressive tools, and Killjoy and Chamber have abilities that do damage, which gives them a lot more options to work with. Cypher is facing an Omen situation but in the Sentinel class. He's a good agent when he's fulfilling his job inside of a team comp, but unfortunately there are other agents that have more dynamic kits that take priority over him in a team comp. Killjoy, Astra, and Viper all have more Sentinel-like sight denial abilities. Plus, Astra and Viper have vision blocking capabilities as well. In fewer words, Cypher is a good agent for the Cypher mains out there, but if you aren't a Cypher main, it might be hard to feel comfortable playing. Breach is a unique situation within the meta. He's great for competitive play because his kit makes him a strong initiator for coordinated teams. But in solo queue, you're going to have to deal with hitting teammates with utility occasionally, stunning too early or too late, and maybe even having to use utility only for yourself. Because of this, Breach is in the B tier on our tier list because his kit gives him the potential to be good, but unfortunately the shortcomings of his kit make him a big liability for his team in an uncoordinated environment. Plus, if you're playing ranked and you need an initiator, Sova, Skye, and KO are all much more worthy picks who will get the job done a lot safer and easier than Breach can, unless you're playing on Fracture. The only map that Breach is necessary for is on Fracture, where he can control much more space easily. At the bottom of the B tier, we have Omen. I gotta say, if you would have told me that Omen would be hovering right above C tier earlier this year, I would have called you a liar. But here we are. Let's explain our Omen ranking by saying he's not in B tier because his kit is fundamentally weak. Omen is in B tier because every other controller does something that he can't. Viper blocks more vision than him, and she has abilities that lets her anchor sights or lurk. Astra has more smokes that are more reliable and available, plus she has really strong hard CC. Even Brimstone has nice post-plant capabilities with his ultimate and molly that give him a niche. Every other controller does something that he physically cannot, so until he gets buffs or reworked abilities into his kit, he is going to struggle to feel relevant in the current meta. Now, closing out with the C tier, the biggest surprise ranking of the year has to go to Phoenix in our opinion. This agent was flying high at the beginning of the year, and now he has fallen from grace to the C tier by the year's end. So how did Phoenix get here? Well, there's two main things that hold Phoenix back. The first thing is that Phoenix's kit is kind of generic in that he doesn't do one thing really well, and all of his abilities don't really give him a special role as an entry fragging duelist. The second thing is that other duelists seem to have found niches that they are uniquely good at, which makes Phoenix a low priority. And of course, there's also the fact that double duelists aren't as popular anymore. Phoenix is suffering from power creep, and the only way to fix this is through balancing from the devs. Oh, Brimstone. Brim is a very niche agent at the moment, so even though he's in C tier, he's not unviable everywhere. Brimstone is an agent that is fine to use if you need a smoker that has a low skill floor so you won't mess him up. But he doesn't excel at much of anything outside of maybe post plants, where he can delay for quite a bit of time with his molly and ultimate. Brimstone's kit just feels lackluster, and having only 3 smokes makes it hard for him to feel good throughout a round like Astra or Viper can. Another thing is that his smoke range is also very small comparatively, and that makes it very hard for him to help his team on some maps where the range is a little too far. Hopefully some Brimstone buffs come his way next year. Okay, we all know Yora's rework is close, so don't fret that he's in C tier because he is very likely not going to be here any longer once his rework drops. For now, we wait patiently until we learn more about his new abilities and potential playstyle, and then we can accurately judge where he's probably going to land in 2022 in the Valorant meta going into the future. And with that being said, that concludes our end of the year tier list. If you enjoyed this tier list, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to keep up to date with the latest Valorant news, updates, and guides. Also, make sure to check out our website for some truly amazing on-demand coaching. This has been your host, Sergeant Frost, and happy holidays, folks.